So I sit within Department of Health and Social Care, and I'm also in Department of Home Affairs. So there's the two departments, and then constituency work, and it's sometimes a struggle to get the balance right. And the constituency work can vary. So some weeks you might not get many cases, and other weeks you can be absolutely inundated. One of the things obviously happened recently was I made the speech related to the Sir Jonathan Michaels report, and off the back of that I've had a large number of people have contacted me with their own stories, and that's really useful, I think, in terms of a data capture, to be able to take those real life experiences that people have had as patients, as relatives and carers, and as staff members, and then be able to consolidate that in the work that we're doing to try and get the reform we need within our health services. So it's taken a large amount of time, but I think it's really valuable work that's happening, and I'm delighted that people have felt able to come and talk and to share their experiences, which I can then use to inform the direction in terms of how I contribute to the progress we're making. I think we've had some real positive change. I think the abortion reform was something that I'd recognised in my manifesto. I'm hugely supportive of, and I've been delighted with, the way we've seen a real public upswell of support for that, actually, and people realising that we needed to reform. It was the right thing to do to provide that pro-choice option and to make sure that's done in informed surroundings, so that people have access to non-directive counselling and then have access to abortion services that are equal and available to all. So that's been a hugely positive piece of work. And the Jonathan Michaels review, I think, has been a very positive start, and I see that as the start. The ground has been laid, but what I'm not naive to is that we've also had reports previously where the ground has been laid and then nothing's been planted. It is about right care, the right place at the right time, and I think people have to understand and be aware what the waiting lists are, and I think we should absolutely be accountable to making sure that we shorten those, that we're meeting the targets for the 2-week cancer waits. These things are absolutely critical. So I think it's a positive step. We've started publishing those, and there's a big piece of work going on around actually bringing those down, so we're achieving them, and we're doing that regularly. We need to look at how we discharge people from hospital. It's not just discharging people quicker to shorten the stay, because actually there's no good doing that if you're not discharging them appropriately. I think you can find with health, because everyone has had some interaction with health, everyone has an experience of it, and I think we see the same with the roads. Everyone drives on the roads, therefore everyone has some experience of it. And with healthcare, there will be some times when things don't go right. And I think we need to be able to get ourselves to a position as a department where when things go wrong, we're able to say all the protocols were followed, and either there's an issue with what the protocols and the procedures were, or actually there was simply human error. There will always be cases when you're dealing with people where some things don't go to plan. I always say, as a nurse, I went into work, I knew that for 12 and a half hours I'd be delivering care. It might be horribly busy, but at the end of 12 and a half hours, I'd hand all that over and know that that patient was absolutely safe in the hands of the next person, and I'd come home and I'd just relax. You can't do that in this job, because your mind's always thinking, what's the next thing that I could be doing? And, I think you could fill 48 hours a day. So actually, you have to be able to find a way to say, I have to have a rest, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to deliver what I'm doing competently when I am working. So it is a balance. So the promenade was obviously a big issue in Douglas East. I've been working with some companies and some individuals in the promenade, because the way the scheme has happened obviously has negatively affected some in the short term and some in the longer term with relation to parking. So there's a big piece of work, I think, there in terms of, again, that communication. I think the communication now is improved, but I think initially it was probably a case of could do better, and people felt that they weren't confident of what exactly was happening or changing with their parking or their road layout in front of their property, and that has a real fundamental effect on someone's life when there's a potential value change in their property. There's accessibility issues for those whose mobility may be reduced, and those were all issues that I was trying to pick up, along with those businesses where there's a fundamental issue. If people can't get to your business easily, they'll go elsewhere, so there's a risk of losing businesses. The promenade's been a big scheme. I think it's hugely welcomed in the main, but there's obviously concerns just about the impact short term and longer term for that. And then obviously we have the Eastern Area Plan in terms of actual development. So we've got the brownfield sites, which we've got a number of, and what the government's bigger plan is for those. So those are probably the sort of specific ones that I would highlight. And one of the others that I'm looking at separately, which we've just reported, is harbour strategy, which obviously falls just to the end of the Douglas East area, but is more of a national asset, obviously, in terms of our national infrastructure, but geographically is Douglas East. So I certainly want to see some significant work towards implementing the Sir Jonathan Mycroft Review. I think that's absolutely key. I'm looking forward to having further conversation with colleagues around assisted dying. I think that trying to see where we might be able to fit in terms of our legislation, and I think there needs to be a very, very careful look at that. There's been certainly public interest in that as a theme. It's not new, it's happening elsewhere, so we just need to be sure that we're confident in what our laws are and what we'd like them to be, and there's a big conversation I think needed around that.